and welcome to Special Recollections. I'm your host, Caitlin Ray Schulte. This is a monthly podcast dedicated to and supported by the information found in Eastern Kentucky University's Special Collections and Archives. Throughout this series, we'll explore what the archives has to offer and explore topics of history and historical preservation. In our first episode, we're going to meet the wonderful staff of Special Collections and learn about what they do. Thank you guys for joining me today, and without further ado, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Jackie Couture. I'm team leader of Special Collections and Archives.
I'm Neil Kasiak. I'm an oral historian and archivist out of Special Collections.
Great. And how long have you guys been working at EKU's Special Collections?
I've been there since, 1994. So.
All right.
And I came in originally as a graduate student volunteer in 2010, and then I was a project archivist for a couple of years, and then moved into the oral historian position in 2015 in August.
All right, cool. So you've already described a little bit about what you guys do. You said, Neil, you said that you do a lot of oral history. That's your head of it, and then you're the team leader. Can you, Jackie, can you go in a little bit more about what you do for the archives?
Okay. First of all, let me kind of give an overview of the archives. We're made up of 4 collecting units, basically. There's university records, so we have all the primary records of the university, and Ashley will talk to you more about that. We have what we call special collections, which is a book collection, map collection, and those are Kentucky materials, Kentucky authors about Kentucky and that kind of thing, and Debbie Whalen will talk to you more about that. Then we have oral history, which is recorded interviews about subjects and relating to Kentucky. And then we have manuscript collections, which are collections from families and businesses and organizations throughout the state, mostly focused on our service region, but there are some that are statewide in scope.
All right.
So, and I kind of oversee the team as a whole, as well as the manuscript parts of the collection and processing and acquisition of those collections.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. It's, even though I worked there over the summer, sometimes I forget that we have such a sprawling grasp, really, on anything and everything. Yeah. So thank you for laying that out. And then, Neil, you've been, I know over the summer I worked a lot with sort of working with the manuscripts of oral history. So is there anything else to oral history other than just manuscripts and tapes?
Yeah, the actual interviews themselves. Kind of the way that I like to describe oral history is that they're usually one-on-one interviews of dialogue between 2 people talking about a particular topic or subject. And the more than 3,900 interviews that we have really kind of document perspective more so than anything else. And the collection itself, how you had mentioned kind of the paper side of it, some of the interviews have full transcripts, some have paper indexes, and then something new that we've been working with in the last couple of years is generating digital indexes that can get posted on our website at oralhistory.eku.edu. And so that's kind of the reference that you were given earlier of that paperwork. Our collections span from Eastern Kentucky, across Kentucky, and as well as kind of national and some global events are covered as well. So it's pretty diverse in a rich collection.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I think it was the last thing that I did was superstitions of the Appalachians or something like that. Yeah. It was
doing some folklore.
Yeah, it was
what you're looking into in mountain life.
Yeah, it was that exactly. So with oral history, getting new acquisitions is as easy as plopping down with someone with a tape recorder, I imagine, and just saying, hey, we're talking about this, and
in a nutshell, but there a lot of research, a lot of kind of preparation goes in before you kind of plop down with the microphone.
Right.
There's a great deal of what makes quality oral histories is being prepared and having a well design project, and that definitely is time intensive. But we got a lot of really good projects going currently. So.
Nice. Well, and that brings me back over to Jackie. I've always wondered how you obtain new acquisitions. Neil researches and finds people for a topic, right? And so how do the other branches find acquisitions?
In terms of manuscript collections, we have multiple ways of getting new materials. Most of our materials are just donated by people who... One of the biggest collections we got recently was through an estate auction. Someone purchased this mass of scrapbooks and papers and donated it to us from an estate auction. Sometimes we will purchase materials. We recently purchased a collection on early EKU history that was kept by one of the first regents of the university. That was a purchase from a bookstore in Lexington. But typically it's one or the other. So donation or purchase, of course we prefer donations above purchases.
Yes.
But if it's a valid collection and it's relevant to Eastern and it has good content in it, then we will purchase if we have to.
All right. So. Yeah, well, that's interesting. Can you think of an example of like a particular Eastern Kentucky memorabilia or acquisition recently that you just had to have, so you purchased it, or?
One of our collections was recently given to us was the Tom Appleton Papers, and he collects things from all over the state, so it's a pretty wide scope of a collection. It has things from the 1700s to the present, and the geographic scope is the entire state. Along with that, he set up an endowed account that will give us accrued interest annually that we can spend on purchasing materials.
Oh, wow.
So I get to play in eBay, and I have searches established that pop up things every once in a while. So we recently purchased records that document the military career of a man in Hodgensville. We also purchased, it was labeled as a photograph of James B. McCreary. After we purchased it and started looking at it, we realized it wasn't McCreary, but it was William Jennings Bryan. So we purchased that for the collection, but Tom's the one that actually pointed that out to me and said, look, here's a picture. So,
all right.
Those are a couple recent purchases.
Nice.
Sometimes eBay has nothing forever, and then sometimes all of a sudden there's all kinds of Kentucky things that pop up. So
right. That's neat. That sounds like a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
So this is a question for both of you, and it might be a pretty big question depending on how you want to answer it. But why is historical preservation so important for both of your mediums, for any medium?
You want to take that first?
I think that if we don't preserve our history and what's happened in the past, then we keep making the same mistakes. We still do make the same mistakes, but at least if you know what happened in the past, you have at least some reference for how to proceed in the future to improve things.
Right.
So and everybody, I think there's a yearning in people to know where they came from and what happened in their past, in their history. So we do have a lot of genealogy researchers that are doing that. But I think that's just everybody wants to know where they came from and who they are.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that I think is so powerful about oral history itself, going back to perspective. Oral history interviews and oral history collections really, they preserve and promote the access of perspectives that have otherwise been silent through time. Oral history really got popular, at least at Eastern, in kind of the mid-'70s, and since then there's been voices that would have otherwise been silent. They've been kind of brought to the fore and been allowed to speak in ways that they never have in the past. Kind of the first thing that comes to my mind with your question is I fulfilled a recent request with somebody who contacted me about an interview that was with, I think, their great-grandfather. And I fulfilled that request and gave it to them, and then they sent me an email back pretty shortly thereafter saying that they just listened to that interview with 4 generations, and it just kind of made their day listening to their to their relative in their real voice. And so providing that access and preserving those stories is really kind of the essence of what the Oral History Collection in the Burge Center really fulfills for the community. So it's all about preservation.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really great that they were able to all come together and hear someone from, I mean, some of the people may have never even met that individual, but they could all hear him, and people who did remember him and met him before he passed on, they could hear him, and that's amazing.
And if I'm not mistaken, it came from the Depression Memories collection too. So potentially the topic that interview covers is it covers events and memories in the history of that particular individual that really helped shape both them as well as the kids that they raised and the lifestyles that they chose to live after the Great Depression. So it's very revealing,
right?
Especially across generations like that.
Yeah, I would say so. So this is, I think we've kind of already answered this question, but we'll address it straightforward so that no one misses it. But with that being said, of why historical preservation is so important, what can students on campus right here, right now, walking around in the hallways, what can they gain from going to the archives?
Oh, wow.
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
I mean, the obvious that jumps out is exposure to the past and exposure to things that they may have not otherwise considered about the community that they live in. But I really think the silver lining to archives is always having those aha moments and finding things that you never thought that you would be looking for when you find them. And I think both the oral history collection as well as the manuscript collections that Jackie oversees, I mean, there's treasures in there that we don't even know. I mean, there's times when we get into collections and we find things that that may have been rumored and are in there, or may have known were in there but didn't understand the significance that they may have at a given time. So I think kind of the treasure hunt is something that any studious mind or scholar can appreciate coming down into the archives and kind of examining our collections.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that we've been focusing on, last year we did an event called Archives After Dark. And we wanted to focus specifically on creative inspiration from historical objects.
Right.
So it was an application process. We're doing that again. It starts applications open October 8th. So look for links.
Mm-hmm.
I think I saw a link about it on Facebook, actually.
You probably did, because we've started kind of promoting it a little bit.
Right.
But it was an application process. We reviewed all the applicants. You have to submit a writing sample, and not a hard application, but you have to talk about how historical things affect you in terms of creativity. It's open to writing any style of writing, short story, essay, poetry, plays, anything that you want to create. It's open to artists or any other kind of creative medium as well. But you get to select a historical item from a curated collection, and then you do something creative with that, using that as inspiration. Last year we had some fabulous products that came out of that. We had a poem, a play, a couple short stories, and several art pieces that were created. So we're really
nice.
Excited.
I didn't know about the art pieces, but
Yes.
that makes sense. Every art medium is welcome.
Yes.
That's nice. I get to meet those people October 5th for the video that I'm making for
That's right.
for Night at the Archives. So
That's right.
that'll be fun getting to hear about their experiences, and really
Yes.
I'm excited. I hope I get to have time to apply for that myself.
I do too.
So we have a couple more minutes, but just to kind of wrap things up, any closing remarks? Any other upcoming events with the archives that you would like to talk about or let the people know?
Yes. October is Archives Month, American Archives Month, across the U.S. So we are having 2 events for that, hopefully.
Yes.
One event,
Yes.
One event is a panel with speakers, of which you are one.
Oh, yes, I remember now. Yes.
And it's featuring students who have done work with us on various projects.
Right.
So there will be 2 and maybe 3 students that will participate in that panel discussion. And then later on in the month, we're hoping to be able to do an archives-themed escape room.
Ooh.
So those will be coming up in October.
Nice. Sounds exciting. Yes, thank you for reminding me of that. I promise I didn't forget. I just, it was on the back burner.
Yes, that's October 3rd.
October 3rd, yes. I will write that down right now.
Yes, at 4:30.
Yes,
So
yes.
if anyone wants to come.
Yeah, oh my goodness, I'll get to... Well, everyone else is hearing about it right now. Yes. I just realized.
Yes.
I almost said, I'll tell everyone about it. I'm telling you guys about it now. All right, awesome. Any closing remarks, Neil?
Just come down and see us. There's facets and aspects of our collection that can satisfy the curiosity of pretty much all kinds of questions. So don't be strangers. Come and see us.
All right. Yeah, take it from me, these people are really nice. They're incredibly helpful, and they are just as excited as you are to discover whatever past you're looking for. So yeah, go down and meet them. It's great down there. Thank you guys for coming. This has been great. Great to catch up. Great to see you guys again. And we will be meeting Ashley and Debbie in just a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you. We are back with Special Recollections, and we are with our 2 new guests. We just left Jackie and Neil. So if you guys wouldn't mind introducing yourselves and your title in the archives.
I'm Debbie Whalen, and I am the Special Collections Librarian.
And I'm Ashley Thacker, University Records Administrator.
All right. And how long have you guys been working at EKU Special Collections?
I have been there 18 years now.
All right.
So I've been 8 because I started out as a student and just kept working up.
Right. Alrighty. So you guys mentioned what you do. Debbie, you're the archives librarian, and you're the
Records Administrator.
So would you mind going in a little bit more detail about what it is you do for the archives?
Sure. The special collections is basically what we call our book collection. So I'm primarily responsible for the books and periodicals that relate to Kentucky history and literature and some Appalachia and Kentucky authors and genealogy. And we also house some rare and at-risk materials and materials of artifactual interest and faculty publications, too.
All right. Nice. Okay, so records-wise has kind of two faces. You have the face that's out on campus, and that's where I'm helping faculty and staff organize their records, making sure we're keeping what we need to keep per the state and getting rid of what we need to keep. No, getting rid of what we need to get rid of. Because everything has like a set time limit, except permanent records, which is where the archival component comes in, as we want to make sure we're preserving the university's history and that we're documenting what's going on today for those, 50 years from now who has no clue what's going on because,
right.
something newer is out than Twitter or whatever.
Yes.
So making sure that everything is in kind of a permanent package that we can save for future generations.
All right. This is more a question for myself now that you've mentioned permanent records. How permanent is permanent? Is that forever and ever?
Forever and ever, as long as we can possibly keep it.
All right.
And think Board of Regents minutes, like those go back to the beginning of the university. Mm-hmm. So we want to keep as much as we can. I prefer paper.
We know what to do with paper.
We know what to do with paper. Digital's a little more challenging, which creates a nightmare in today's days. But we're getting there. We're figuring it out. And that's why we're here, is to figure it out and make sure we can help others figure it out, too.
Right. Yeah, that's, I think I saw a little bit of it over the summer when I worked, kind of the transition. We're not, just to be clear, we're not taking these records and destroying them after we digitize them. We're hanging on to them. But I have seen the process of digitizing certain paper mediums, and scanning takes a long time. Mm-hmm. And computers can be slow. So I think I remember that. But all right. You mentioned we house some at-risk materials, right? And I know I saw a few over the summer with red rot, the flaky stuff. So just out of curiosity, what are some other characteristics of an at-risk material, such as a book? We'll stick to books.
Yeah, a lot of, you wouldn't think Kentucky books, are anything to worry about, but a lot of them, they're out of print, so you can't find a replacement copy, or if you do find a copy, it's not in great condition. So one of the things that we try to do is to store them in, temperature and humidity controlled conditions so that so they'll be there for researchers 100 years from now, or forever and ever. But sometimes you think of like books that have like extra illustrations in them that, or maybe an old map or something is in a book, and a lot of people like to take those out and sell them. So, when we're talking about books at risk, those kind of books can be at risk for theft, or we say it's mutilation, to remove things like that. So things that, could be of high value, or just value, from a research standpoint of, maybe this is the only book we have on whatever Kentucky subject, or maybe it's something that's old. But surprisingly, some newer things too can be rare or at risk. It just depends on, maybe it had like a not very many books of this, were published at the time.
Right. A good example is the anti-separation.
Oh, yeah, there was we received a request recently for a picture from a book that we had. It was about the railroad, where they had separate what do they call it? Carriages, I guess, coaches for African Americans at the time. And, this picture in a book is the only thing that, they wanted, there was no other copy of this photograph except in this book as far as, their research had done. So we're trying to get this picture, but yet the book is printed on such fragile acidic paper that if we try and flatten it on a scanner, we'll break the binding of the book.
Yeah.
So that is definitely a great example of, the kind of at-risk material and that's a book that I think only we had in Kentucky.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, so then it's very much like, how do we do this?
Yeah.
And two of us working on a scanner trying to make sure there's minimal damage.
Right.
Yes.
Someone cradle this gently and
yes.
wear gloves.
Don't push down too far on the book. And
right.
Yes.
Yeah, that when we were moving the Elmwood books up to that room in the library, oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. There were some books that were sturdier than others, so it's, of course we're not chucking them onto the shelf because
I hope not.
They're still, they're still like 70-plus-year-old books, but then there were others where it's like you're gently cradling it in your hands like it's a newborn bunny rabbit or something, but still it's because it's an old book that it still kind of is flaky and that old book smell is everywhere and still fun. So back to you, Ashley.
Yeah.
You work with university records. Mm-hmm. So other than, I guess, preserving what has happened, say, at like Regency meetings or permanent records, what's another... why is it important to keep administrative records?
Ooh. Oh, there's lots of versions of that one, Caitlin. So you have the legal end, right, for lawsuits that happen years later and you need documentation to say that we were doing what we were supposed to do. So that's the not-so-fun side of it. The fun side of it is for things like at alumni events or during homecoming with alumni. They get to come and see them and their sweetheart. We have a patron who was just near and dear to my heart. His name is Harv. And Harv had lost some of his memories due to a helicopter crash. And one of the wars, I can't remember now which one it was, but he had contacted us to kind of help him piece back to his history here, because he was on the Progress when Doug Whitlock was here on the Progress. Was a huge member of ROTC, had this huge history and presence at Easter, and I can remember he had met his first wife here, and they had been sweethearts and on publications. Aww. So we were able to pull those publications that he had been involved in and show him pictures of them and his kids pictures of their mom and their dad when they, were sweethearts in college. So I think that's the fun, sentimental side of it that makes it worth doing. The legal side is okay, we have to do this. But the people side of it and getting to meet, those eternal colonels who were so proud of where they come from, and you have that instant connection because, you work here and you have a love for the university too.
Right.
You want to save those little pieces that back in the day people didn't think was anything. So... permanent records are important, but those publications, those fun little tidbits that recorded the people here are just as important.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so sweet.
It is sweet. He's precious. I got to meet him at the last homecoming because we'll set up there from time to time too, and so we'll probably be at the brunch this year and highlight the pioneers and all that jazz. So we'll have all the materials out from when they came here. And it's just so fun to see their faces and hear their stories on that day of reminiscing from back in the day. Yeah. Makes you proud to be a colonel.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. So this is going to be kind of the same question for you, Debbie, the overarching question of why is historical preservation important. So why is it important that we keep these books in the archives and preserve them and make sure that later generations have access to them?
I think, if in terms of documenting our own history, taking ownership of Kentucky history and not letting someone else tell our story, that means a lot. I'm finding other libraries, I'm glad when our materials get in other libraries, because that, the more copies you have of something, the more, it has a chance of surviving. But
Right.
I think, I think it's important for people to be able to come to a Kentucky located archives to look at these things, because this should be the place where Kentucky things are stored. That it's more of a pride issue, and
Right.
and I think a lot of Kentucky materials have gone, and I'm mostly talking about manuscripts, but it just feels like if you're a Kentuckian, you should be able to stay within your own state and find materials about, yourself.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We are at a university where Kentucky is in the name. We should be able to go to the library and find information about ourselves. Yeah, I never really thought of it that way. There could be a situation where you're in any state and you're like, well, I want to learn more about myself, and some people may not know that they have access to that material, or that material is lost, unfortunately. So it's very important that we take care of it. Which leads into my next question. And either one of you can answer first or second, however you'd like. But so what can students gain from EKU archives?
So much. That's a lot. Okay, so there are two sides of it.
Yes,
Go
you
ahead.
can answer as you like. Yes.
So I'm going to speak to the records end of it, and you can speak to research if
Okay.
you're good with that.
Go ahead.
Okay, so on the records end with students, it's documenting their history too. Student organizations, for example, a lot of times they get passed down to, historians or other positions within the group, which is good, but you lose a lot in the transition, or years from now it's not there anymore because something happened with the university.
Right.
So your major student organizations, it's great to donate the records and archive them too, because that's something that you're going to have a resource to look back at for years and years and years, and a safe place to keep your material, as opposed to somebody's garage or something like that.
Right.
So on that end, we're here to preserve student items as well, not just, faculty or staffs. Everyone is important, and it's especially important to represent students' viewpoints and their voices as well.
Right. Absolutely.
So on the research end for why archives is important for students, and I think it could be true of any library, is the materials. I mean, if you're, for example, doing, want to find out about the Bluegrass Army Depot, or, anything going on with there, you probably want to research some of the history, and we have those materials. So
Unique perspectives that aren't going to be on Google.
Right.
Right, yeah.
Right.
As much as it pains me to say it, Google does not always have everything.
Right. But I think it could be even, maybe you're doing that for a project, but it could also be like for your own personal research, and I'm specifically thinking, two examples. One, genealogy. If you if your family, has Kentucky roots, that kind of information is found in an archive. We have, census records and access to Ancestry.com and court records and county histories. And that can, that's kind of like a personal, really finding out about yourself, and your family. But I was also thinking about our Archives After Dark event where they're using an archives item as their inspiration for a creative project, whether it's an artwork or a short story or a poem, and it's more of making a personal connection to the past. I think has value in and of itself, and what it reveals about you or your relationship to the world. And I think archives can do that.
Yeah. That was something that I saw firsthand over the summer with my job, was just how many people came in for genealogy research. And these were people we had someone from New Jersey or something crazy like that?
I think we had Connecticut.
Or Connecticut.
And Missouri,
yeah.
we get Missouri
yeah.
all the time.
Missouri, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So these people coming from across state lines to come and find out about themselves is really amazing. It's remarkable. Neil and Jackie said something that was really, I think, profound when they said people want to know who they are and where they came from.
Yeah.
So, you guys are upholding that. You guys are helping people with that. And it's, to put it in very simple terms, it's very neat.
We find it fun.
To put it in more extravagant terms, it's magnificent. It's, I love it. I do. I really do.
I'm glad you have a passion for it. It makes me happy to see someone else recognizing that value and preserving that legacy, because it takes a village.
Yeah. Well, and that's... Gosh, that's another thing. What was it that there was so much that I worked on over my spring semester co-op and in the summer. But when it's just one person working on something, it takes so long, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's, while you're working on it, you're just like, this is going to help someone someday, even though I really didn't enjoy learning about the Valley View Ferry. I was still like, I can see how someone can use this in the future. There was so much to learn from it. Now if someone asks me about that ferry, I'll be like, yep, this is all you need to know about it. Mm-hmm. And here's where you get the information. The archives.
We collect lots of random tidbits of history.
It seems random at the time, but then I'm very grateful when we do have something to help somebody, because, we don't preserve everything. We can't preserve everything, Right. And so I'm glad when we do have something, and then it's kind of like you can also see where things weren't kept, or,
Yeah.
And we can't control that.
Yeah, now this one piece of the puzzle fits somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Someone needed this. I can imagine it's pretty hard to let go of some acquisitions, and then some aren't as difficult. Like what was it at the court documents? There was like 1 billion affidavits that we got rid of, or something like that, or not affidavits.
Yeah, I can't remember, because there were
so many.
There were so many things, and I think, and you'd have to talk to Jackie about, why we decided to shred certain things or
Right.
keep certain things, and it's kind of, and it's something that we have to deal with as an archives, is that, if there's duplicates, easy enough, just keep one copy and we're good,
Right.
because...
Seating charts. I run across seating charts every day in my life. There's no point in a seating chart. Throw that away.
You don't need to know where little Marie sat in 1979 class of...
And there's like 5 copies. It's taking up space in my box. Get that out.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
I wish I was kidding. I'm not kidding.
But that's a good topic for something that Jackie mentioned, was historical podcasts about historical preservation. itself later, what do we keep and what do we discard? So that's good to, I'll have to write that down. But so on that note, any closing remarks or fun tidbits of information you want to lead off with, as you like?
Fun tidbits.
Or you can just say, come to the archives, as you like, really.
Sure, come research with us. It's a good time. That's what I'll say.
You never know what you're going to find in the archives.
So true.
We're going to have an episode about that, so...
Yes.
Lord, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And we're definitely here to help.
Yes.
Hashtag.
Here to help. Yes. Oh, I'll get to put that in the tags
That's
when
right.
this podcast goes up. Well, all right. And yes, again, I know I said this with Jackie and Neil, but please, please, please come down and see the archives people. They're all very nice. They are here to help, and it's just a fun time down there. So, we will end it there, I think. All questions answered. Is it still recording?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I never can tell. I have bad depth perception. Thank you guys for coming in so much. This was really fun. It was good to see you guys again. And I'll see you around. Okay?
All right.
Thanks for having us. We're
Yep.
excited. I'm glad you caught the archives bug.
Yes. I think we've learned quite a bit today, but we are only just scratching the surface. Again, I want to thank our Special Collections and Archives staff for coming in to talk to us today. As you all know, October is on our doorstep and Halloween is close behind. So our next episode will delve into some of the local haunts about campus, pun intended. This has been Special Recollections with Caitlin Ray Schulte, and thank you for tuning in.